Good evening, everybody, and welcome to LMC. Hi, guys. I'm Pastor Dave Sain, Senior Shepherd here at LMC. I hope that you are having a good evening. Shalom to everybody. Peace to you. It's Wednesday night. Of course, you know what that means. It's time for Bible study. We didn't have one last week. Honestly, I was just exhausted last week. Finally, the house is starting to get together. We're finally starting to, we made some headway. All the work is done. Now it's just getting everything back to the way it used to be, or actually even better than it was before. But it's been tiring. But I definitely wanted to be here tonight. Got some neat stuff for you. We're going to hopefully start to tie some things together in these studies that we've been doing as we're heading towards understanding really the content of the book of Revelation, but also we're talking about the calendar at the same time. We're heading in that direction as well. But before we jump into this, let me just get some of these commercials out of the way. If this is the first time you're hanging out with us, or even if you have hung out with us before but you're not subscribed, you can please subscribe. That'd be awesome. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you're notified each time we go live. If you enjoy the messages, remember to give us a thumbs up. The more thumbs up, the more this goes out to other people. And certainly we want other people to be able to hear some of these teachings. And don't forget, comment. Let me know where you're watching from. And, if you got any questions and stuff, shoot them over. We'll do our best to try to answer them. In the meantime, make sure you got your Bible ready, got some markers, some pens, some pencils, some highlighters. We're going to go into some neat stuff tonight. The notes, of course, are available online. You can download them. And they're also, obviously, if you're using the app or you're using the website tonight, the notes are available right there. And they're also available in the YouTube description section as well. So this way you can follow along with everything we've got. Okay, I think that's all the commercials for today. Let's see. I have no idea what number we're on. We've been kind of floating around, but the title for tonight, let me do this here. The title for tonight is Which New Moon? Which New Moon? Now, we haven't really, I haven't really talked about I really have very rarely ever heard anybody talk about the new moon. I certainly have not talked about the new moon. There really is, one of the things that I hope you realize by now is that in really coming to truth, really coming to understand what this book is really about, one of the things you realize is we don't know a lot. There's a lot of unlearning that has to go on, and then there's a lot of learning that has to go on. And so we really haven't even touched the idea of a new moon. We're going to touch it tonight. This isn't an in-depth teaching on how to do the new moon or anything like that, but we're going to touch it. We're going to talk about it a little bit. It is a very, very neglected topic amongst the Hebrew roots people. Certainly amongst Judaism, and it's not even a thought amongst modern religion, modern Christianity today, and certainly not Islam. So it's but yet you're going to see it is very, very important to understanding. Now, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to really sort of tie in a lot of the lessons and principles that we've been going over in other studies, be it Wednesdays, be it Saturdays, even discussions with Brother Max on Friday nights. A lot of it's going to start to tie in together because everything that we've been doing, or everything I've been trying to share and teach, has sort of been trying to lay a foundation, a way of thinking to help you understand some things later on. This is kind of neat. I was walking home from the gym today, getting my steps in, and I came across a house. It looked like a field, and this is what was growing. Let me put this up at the camera so you guys can see it. Yeah, hopefully you guys can see that there. There was a field of this growing. And I'm walking by it, and I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. And once I saw it, I immediately knew what it was. Just right off the bat, I knew what it was. This, of course, is darnel. These are tares. And, of course, if you look at it, it looks like wheat. As a matter of fact, I showed PM just before getting on tonight. And here I am. I'm just sitting out in the street, and I'm plucking up people must have thought I was nuts. I'm plucking up all these weeds, and I'm putting them in my bags. I wanted to use them for tonight. I want to bring them on Saturday as well, and just for an object lesson for people to see. And I showed PM tonight. I said, hey, bro, check these out, man. And he looks and he goes, oh, is that wheat? That was his first response. His first response was, oh, is that wheat? And he says, or barley? I said, well, I know why we would say that, but that's darnel. That is the tares. That's what the master is talking about. And certainly that comes into play tonight. The tares, the little leaven, leavens a whole lump, all the different things that we've been talking about are going to start to come full circle, because these are all preparatory lessons for understanding some of the deeper things. Because really what we want, or what we should be desiring, is to understand. And we've been talking about this on our morning mannas. You know, the whole Psalm 119, David wants to understand. He wants to know Abba's Torah. He wants to know the mysteries of Abba's Torah, as we should as well. And so we're getting into the territory of more fruit, of 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. And so we're going to get into some stuff that might make you a little bit uncomfortable, but it'll definitely make you think this thing through and realize that there really is a bigger story that's going on here. Either way, I hope that you enjoy it. Let's start off with this. So new moon. When we say new moon, let me give you a couple of verses. Again, this isn't an extensive study on the new moon itself, but here's a couple of verses. First of all, we're all kind of familiar with the concept of Sabbath, or we should be at this point, right? We're all familiar with the concept of Sabbath. That is the seventh day, that is the rest after 6 days of working. And we're going to get into more of that as well, as to how that gets figured out and how that gets plotted. Because this is all part of the calendar. This is all part of Abba's instruction. The calendar is part of the Torah. The Torah is based on the sun, the moon, and the stars. Those are the witnesses that Abba has given that tells us the story. But it seems that in our modern day, by modern day, I mean really kind of like the last 2,000 years, the concept of the new moon has really sort of just gone out the window. And partially, of course, because of this idea that is pervasive throughout the modern religious world, that the Torah is just not for us. But even amongst people who claim to keep the Torah, to believe the Torah, to do what Moses says, or whatever version of it that they're doing, the new moon is not something that's celebrated or that's even recognized any longer, and certainly not recognized in its proper place. And yet, here's just a couple of verses. The first one's out of Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 23. And when you read Isaiah 66, and of course I encourage you to do that, to go in there and to read it in its context. And once you do, you're going to find out that Isaiah 66 is talking about the coming of the Mashiach. It's talking about the Father establishing his kingdom. And it's about the resurrection. It's about a new heaven and a new earth. And it tells us in that day when we are with Abba, when we are with him at that temple, that true place, that new Jerusalem, in verse 23 of Isaiah 66, it gives us a little description of what we will do. This is the people of Yah, right? We're talking resurrection now. It says, and it shall be that from new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yah. So this is telling us that in the kingdom, the people who make it there, if you want to make it to the kingdom, I want to make it to the kingdom. I think that's sort of the intent of everybody. We want to make it to the kingdom. Well, what are the rules or the laws of the kingdom? Well, here it is. It's telling us that from new moon to new moon and from Sabbath to Sabbath, we will come and worship our Elohim. So this is millennial kingdom. This is the way it was prior to the coming of Messiah. And then somehow, for some reason, we've lost it. Well, we'll talk about why. But we should be, as we gain understanding, as we gain knowledge, as our hearts are circumcised to want to obey Abba's instruction, this stuff should come back to us. We're going to begin to learn about this again. Abba is going to begin to restore his Torah in our hearts. He's going to begin to restore our understanding. Give us teachers and instructors and scribes that are going to be able to open it up for us. And he's going to give us eyes to see it and ears to hear it, and to come out of the deception that's all around us, and to draw, as King David says, to incline his heart to Abba's word, to make it a lamp to his feet and a light to his path. So that's just one verse. That's Isaiah 66 telling us that in the kingdom, we will celebrate new moons, and Sabbaths. Now, I guess, again, it's not something most of us are familiar with, but there it is. That's what it says. Here's just some other verses about the new moon. Ezekiel chapter 46 and verse 3. It says, "And all the people of the land shall also bow themselves at the entrance to this gate before Yah on the Sabbaths and on the new moons." So Sabbaths and new moons were days of worship. A new moon was really a Sabbath. There's, the Sabbaths are the feast days. We know that. The Sabbaths are the seventh day. We know that. But there's also new moons. New moons were also a time when no work was done, when there was the worship of Elohim. And you can see there in the days of Ezekiel, that is certainly the issue. In the days of Messiah, that was the issue as well. We'll look at that in a second. Here's Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10. And it says, "And in the day of your gladness, and in your appointed time." So this is the instruction given to Moses. "And in your appointed times." Every time you see appointed times, it means the Moedim. It means new moons. It means Sabbaths. It means Passover. It means first fruit. All of those things, trumpets, etc., etc. "And in the day of your gladness, and in your appointed times, and at the beginning of your new moons, you shall blow the trumpets over your ascending offering, and over your slaughterings of peace offerings. And they shall be a remembrance for you before your Elohim. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim." So that's the original instruction as given to Moses, again reminding the children of Israel that there are the Sabbaths and there are the new moons. Now, today we would say a new month, but there's a lot more to it than just the concept of the idea of a new month, and we'll get into some of that in a little bit. Here's 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 27, which gives us a really a little bit more pointed direction or definition as to what a new moon is. 1 Samuel chapter 20 and verse 27. It says, "And it came to be in the next day, the second day of the new moon." So there is a first day of the new moon. The first day of the new moon is what we were just reading, when you blow the trumpets, when you worship, when you set aside time, just like you would for the Sabbaths or for let's say trumpets and the feast days. That's what the new moons, that first day of the new moon tells you when the new month begins on Abba's calendar. It tells you when the new month begins. And so I'm only showing you this verse because what this is telling us is that Saul expected David, it came to be on the next day, the second day of the new moon, that David's place was empty. And Saul said to Jonathan, his son, "Why has the son of Jesse not come to eat? Either yesterday on the first day of the new moon," which was sort of, traditional. That's what you do. You sit down, you have a big meal, you worship, you think about Yah, you just, take the day off and you sit around with family. Well, that's what they did on the first day of the new moon, or what we would say the new month. And so here's Saul saying either yesterday or today. He didn't show up yesterday on the first day on the new moon festival, and he didn't show up today as well. All right, so there's no doubt this concept of the new moon, goes from one end of the book to the other, all the way to the millennial kingdom. And yet we know so very, very little about it. And certainly whether we're even acknowledging it is another issue. But don't get down on yourself. We're coming out of darkness, right? We're supposed to be coming out of her, coming out of Mystery Babylon. And it's a process to do that. Here's Colossians. So here's now a New Testament sort of witness to show that it didn't change even in the New Testament. And I know people sort of look at Colossians very often in these verses and they think what Saul is saying is, don't do the Sabbaths anymore. Don't do the new moons anymore. Don't do feast days anymore. That is not what he's saying in Colossians. He's saying, do not let people judge you on how to do them. Don't let the Jews of that day, don't let the Pharisees, the Sadducees, who the master tells us are vipers and snakes, don't let them put a burden on you and tell you got to do it this way. That's what Saul is saying. That's in context to the rest of the scripture. If Saul tells us not to do something that is already set up as a law forever, well, then we're in trouble. We're all in trouble. And that's not what Saul did. So anyway, here's Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. It says, let no one therefore judge you in eating or in drinking, or in respect of a festival, that's a feast day, or a new moon, or Sabbaths. So what was going on in his day? Well, festivals for sure, new moons for sure, Sabbaths for sure. And he says, which are a shadow of what is to come. They teach us something. Well, just because they teach us something doesn't mean you don't do them, you don't honor them, you don't keep the instruction. You keep the instruction, but you also learn the deeper meanings in keeping the instruction. We're going to get a deeper meaning because by the end of this, I want to try to show you what I think new moons are a shadow of. Just like everything else, it's a shadow of Messiah at some point, right? Everything's a shadow of Messiah. Well, new moons are also a shadow of Messiah, but something more specific than just that. But I get ahead of myself. So he says, which are a shadow of things to come, of what is to come, but the body of the Messiah. So it's about the Messiah. Everything's about the Messiah. So here's Saul telling us the feast days, the appointed days, the Moedim, the festivals, the Sabbaths, and of course, new moons. These all have a relationship to Messiah. They teach us something about Messiah. All right, so these are just a couple of verses. Honestly, guys, just get a concordance. Get a concordance and just, zip through it. Just look up new moons and you'll find a gazillion different places where it's listed. Now, some of the new versions may say new month, and it is a new month, but it is the new month. It's the new month because the new moon has started. You got to look up at the sky. We'll get into that in just a second. Okay, so there's definitely within the scripture, from cover to cover, this concept about new moons. Again, I know it's new for a lot of us. It's not stuff that we've heard before, but I want to move on from 30 talents to 40 to 50 to 60. And so that takes some understanding. So here is a couple of other verses. Here is number, I don't know what it is, I think it's number 2 on our slides here, or number 3. Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And you guys should be familiar with this. This is the Passover story. Verses 1 and 2. And it says, so this is this is the first Exodus. They're in Egypt. They're about to get out. And Abba tells Moses, this first day, this new month that has started, which is often referred to as the Abib, A-B-I-B. I got it listed up there, the Abib, the first month. This is going to be the first month. So you know when the month begins because you know it starts with a new moon. That new moon, that next day, that dawn, that sunrise, is the first day of a new moon. And Abba is telling Moses, and Yah spoke to Moses and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this new moon. Now, some versions, again, will say this new month. That's okay, so long as you understand what new moon actually means. This new moon is the beginning of new moons for you. It is the first new moon of the year for you. So what's Abba doing? He's changing the calendar. And how is he changing the calendar? Based on the sun, the moon, and the stars. He's using those things to let them know a new month has started. And obviously something wonderful is about to happen because this is going to be the Passover. 14 days from this time, from the first day of the new month, Abib, the Passover is going to take place. And that's, of course, what all of Exodus chapter 12 is about. I don't want to get into all that. You guys can check that out for yourselves. We've talked about that before quite a few times. All right, so how important is this, right? We're supposed to guard Abba's commandments. I mean, Psalm 119 that we've been going over in Morning Manners. How many times does David say over and over and over and over again, I guard your commandments, I guard your precepts, I guard your right rulings, I guard your Torah, I guard, you just over, and Messiah says the same thing over and over and over. It's from cover to cover. So what is one of the commandments we are to guard? Well, here it is, Deuteronomy 16. This is something we need to guard. We haven't, and I don't think it's not necessarily our fault, but we just don't know what we don't know until we do know it. And then we got to adjust. So here's Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verse 1. And listen to the words of Moses. Guard, obey, protect the new moon of Abib. Why? Well, he tells us in the new moon of Abib, and perform the Pesach to Yah your Elohim. That would be on the 14th day of that month. Well, you got to know when the first day is in order to know when the 14th day is. So he's telling them, guard this, protect this. You will, if you do this, if we can guard this, then every month we'll be able to guard after that. If we get the first one right, everything else is going to get right, is going to be right after that. But if you get the first one wrong, if a little leaven gets in there, what happens to the whole lump? Everything's going to get all messed up. Everything's going to be. So his instruction is guard the Abib. And we'll talk more about this a little bit later as to what that exactly means. I know people you're thinking it's the wheat, it's the barley, and the barley is just about coming green. And yes, that is called the Abib, but it's much bigger than that. It's not just that. It's much bigger than that. But another message for another day. I only got so much time, so we can only go over so much. So he says to guard the Abib, the calendar. Basically, he's saying guard the calendar. You got to know when the first day of the first month is, if you're going to understand the first day of the next month, the first day of the next month, the first day of all the way through, all the way to the 7th month. It says, and perform the Pesach to Yah your Elohim. For in the new moon of Abib, in the new month of Abib, but start if you know when the first day is, Yah your Elohim brought you out of Mitzrayim by night on the 14th. So you got to know when the first is to know when the 14th is. Again, we're talking about Abba's calendar. Pretty basic stuff, I think. I think we can wrap our minds around that. So what is one thing we are supposed to guard? The first month, the first day of the first month, the Abib. Why? Because if you get the Abib right, if you get the first day of the first month right, then you will be on track to get the first day of the 7th month right, which means your feast day festivals will be in order. They'll be according to their correct times. And here it is, Leviticus chapter 23, because 7 months later from the first day of the first Abib is this. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 2. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times, the Moedim, the feast days of Yah, which you are to proclaim as set apart gatherings. These are supposed to make us separate and different from the nations. Underscore that in your thinking for a second. What are these things supposed to do? Make us separate, different from the nations, holy unto him. Appointed times of Yah, which you are to proclaim as set apart gatherings. My appointed times, these are times Abba has set that we are to meet with him, are these. And then he goes through, he lists Passover, he lists first fruits, and et cetera, but I'm skipping some verses just to get to the 7th month. So he already told us in Deuteronomy 16, guard the first month, the first day of the first month, so you know when it starts, so that you can do this in verse 24. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th new moon, on the first day of the new moon, you have a rest, a remembrance of Teruah. So you need to guard the Abib, the first day of the first month. Get that correct. Then you will get the first day of the 7th month correct. That is Yom Teruah. If you get the first day of the first month messed up, if the calendar gets messed up, if a little leaven gets in there, then what happens to everything else? It's a domino, right? You hit the one domino, it's like bing, 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 all the way. Everything gets adjusted, and then before you know it, it's not actually the days any longer, and we are in darkness in Babylon, doing everything everybody else is doing. So that's just a couple of instructions. There's a lot more to say about this, but that's not what this particular teaching is about, not what this particular Wednesday is about. But at least I hope enough to sort of whet your appetite. The new moon's important. It's how I guard the Abib, how I know when the first month is, the first day of the first month. It's how I know when the first day of the first month is, so I know when all the other days of the month is, so I know when the 14th is. And it's how I know if I get that right and I get the other ones right, I will know when the first day of the 7th month. So what do the months tell us, or the new moons tell us? The feast days. It tells us the Abib and Passover, and it tells us the feast of the 7th month, when they begin, Yom Teruah, the shout. And we're normally used to pictures like this. Let me put this up. And I know I've even used these pictures before. We should all sort of be familiar with this. Let me make the screen a little bit bigger for you guys so you guys can see all that. These are some pictures that we've used in the past. We've shown these things in the past. Yom Teruah, or the Feast of Trumpets. You can call it whichever you'd like. Leviticus 23, verses 23 through 25, what we just read. So to know the first day of the first month gets you to the first day of the 7th month accurately, and that is trumpets. Well, if you look at the pictures here, and let me just get, I'll use purple here, you can see the moon. Right here and here, they're blowing the shofar. Here's the shofar. And what are they blowing it at? The crescent moon, which today, and has been for a long time, called the new moon. However, the question is it? Which new moon are we talking about? Well, first of all, Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. We've talked about this before, so this should not be foreign to us. We're putting the pieces together. Verse 14 says, "And Elohim said, let the lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate day from night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and years." So he's talking about the sun, the moon, and the stars. So we've got to get this internalized. What did Abba give us so that we know when the first day of the first month is, and when the first day of the 7th month is, and all the other months in between? What did Abba give us to know the appointed times, the Moedim, the seasons? What did he give us to know the days, the particular days? And what did he give us to know the years? Well, if you're talking about Moedim, you're talking about day. If you're talking about holidays, you're talking about days, you're talking about years, you're talking about a calendar. But they're not just for that, they're also for signs. These things on the calendar tell us something. They speak to us. This is Psalms 119. We've talked about this before. I'm just going to mention it, not going to explain it too much. But it says the sun, the moon, and stars, they speak to us. They reveal knowledge. They tell us something. Yes, they tell us when the feast days are. It tells us when the calendar is. But they tell us a whole lot more than that. And that's some conversation that not many of us have really even heard. We've barely understood the thing that's written in the book in front of us. And yet the stars are also telling us, the sun, the moon, and the stars. So what do you need to understand the appointed times, to understand the correct days, and to understand the correct years? You need the sun, the moon, and the stars. All three. And it goes on to say, I'm going to read right here, "And let them be for the lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it came to be so. And Elohim made 2 great lights." The idea is that these things are lights. They give off light. Let your light shine. The greater light, the sun, obviously, to rule the day. So when the sun is ruling, can you see it? Well, obviously. I mean, even if it's cloudy, it still gives off light. The sun to rule the day, and the lesser light, which really is a reflection of the sun, the moon, to rule the night. That is, to give off light in the night. And the stars. So one more time, I'm going to keep drilling this in again and again and again and again and again and again and again. What, according to the Torah, because that's the only thing that matters here, guys. It matters what Moses said. It matters what the prophets said. It matters what the gospel writers said. That is what matters. And what are we told? How do we know appointed times? What is it that Father gave us? Sun, moon, stars. A clock, a calendar in the heavens, so we know literally what time it is, what day it is, what's coming, and what those things mean. That's the signs. What they actually mean, what's being done in them, what's the plan, what is it speaking to us during the day, what is it speaking to us at night. And we have to have eyes to see it and ears to hear it. All three. And Elohim set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And again, why do this? Because Satan can't mess with it. I mean, he can mess with us, and he has, and he's going to definitely try. And there's no doubt he's messed with the calendar. But can he mess with the sun, the moon, and the stars? Can he change them? Can he stop them from doing what they do? No, the information's out there already. It's just up to us now to understand it properly. All right, so these are pictures we're familiar with as what a new moon looks like. Or is that what a new moon actually looks like? Okay, here we go. Let's get into some stuff now. This is a simple illustration. Why is it sun, moon, and stars? So we're talking about a calendar, but it's a clock as well. The heavens literally are a clock up there, and it's counting not just the days, and it's a countdown to something as well, which is what the Moedim are. It's a countdown to the return of the sun. But another message for another day. So on the clock there, so even in our modern world, we still use the same principle that Abba set in the heavens for us. We call it a clock or a watch, a timekeeping piece. Now, I know today we've got all digital stuff, right? And in fact, there's probably, I'm sure there's, a large portion of kids in public school that probably couldn't even look at a clock like this and figure out what time it is. But this is how the heavens are set up. This is exactly how the house of Israel is set up in the Torah. I'm just going to do this real quick. The tabernacle is in the center. The sun, the light, Abba's presence, is there. The priests who reflect it are there as well. And you've got 12 tribes all around and circling. This is how the camp of Israel is set up. This is how the stars with the zodiac, with the Maseroth is set up. This is how the city of Jerusalem is set up. This story is given to us over and over and over again so that we notice, so that we understand. So I'm going to ask you a question. If I were to give you a clock like this, and let me just draw something in here. And I just draw an hour hand. That, I know, terrible looking hour hand, but that's an hour hand. What time is it? Well, you could look at that and you could say, well, it's 2 o'clock. Is it? Is that 2 o'clock? If all I've got is the hour hand, can I tell you what time it is? Well, and then the question, is it 2 a.m.? Is it 2 at night, or is it 2 in the morning, or 2 p.m.? Because, there's daylight hours and there's evening hours. So with just one of the tools, can you figure out what time it is? Well, I guess you could get close in the ballpark, right? You're either going to be 59 minutes either way accurate, or 12 hours accurate, discrepancy either way. That's not very accurate, though. But if I then give you a minute hand, now what time is it? Well, it's either 10 minutes to 2, or you could say it's 1:50. It's another way of saying it. Is that accurate? Well, it's a lot more accurate than just having the hour hand, right? I still don't know AM or PM, but we're just trying to figure out what actual time does the clock say. Well, you could say it's about 10 minutes to 2. It's about 1:50, 10 minutes to 2. But again, is that accurate? And if I give the second hand, now it's accurate. Now I know it is, you could say 10 minutes to 2, but in another 10 minutes to 2 and 59 seconds. Now I've got 3 reference points to understand what time it is. We need 3 reference points. In mechanics, it's an x-axis, it's a y-axis, it's a z-axis to pinpoint a particular point in space. So this works the same way. We need 3 witnesses to accurately identify what time it is. So it's actually going to, in just a second, it's not going to be 10 to 2, it's going to be 9 to 2. So that would be accurate. But again, if I lose a witness or 2, if I take away something or even add something, then what happens? Well, now I could be close, but am I accurate? Am I actually understanding exactly what time it is? This is the instruction that we get from Deuteronomy, and it's not just in Deuteronomy, it's all over the place. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 22. Do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commandments of Yah your Elohim, which I am commanding you. Here's another way which connects us to all the stuff we've been talking about. If you add a little leaven, or let's just say take away something, what happens? You mess up the whole lump. Everything gets messed up. You can know close to about what time it is, but you're not going to be accurate. You may be even somewhere in the ballpark. But, let's say you had an appointment to go see, an attorney who was you had to be there at 2:30 and 45 seconds on the dot, but all you had was an hour hand on your watch in order to get a $10 million gift from a long lost uncle, who died, who was a Saudi Arabian sheik and left you money. Yeah, don't answer those emails if you get them. But I'm just spitballing here. But if you're not there at the appointed time, if you show up 10 seconds late, you don't get it. You show up an hour late, you don't get it. You show up 2 weeks late, you don't get it because you're not there at the appointed time. It's an appointment. And guys, I got to admit, I'm terrible with. I've gotten better in my older age, but I was terrible with appointments my whole life. And I guess that's maybe all of us. We're always late. We're running late. What's the old saying? If you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. Well, I was always late. This is important. If you add something or take away something, it changes the whole equation. This principle is part of the issue of because really what we're talking about is the sun, the moon, and the stars. 3 witnesses that identify things for us, that tell us, because if it's 4 o'clock, what is it telling us? Well, if it's 4:30, it's PM, it's telling me it's time to eat, right? If it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, it's telling me it's time to eat. If it's 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, I'm old, so 8:30, 9 o'clock, it's telling me it's time to go to bed. It's telling me something. There's a message attached to it, as there is a message attached to the sun, the moon, and the stars. All 3 of them. All 3 have to be working together. If we remove any one of them, we could get close, but we will not hit it on the nail head. And I want to hit it on the nail head. At least that's sort of the idea. All right, so this idea of the crescent moons, because that's really what I want to to keep this in the back of your mind. We're going to get back to this a little bit later when we talk about how this thing actually works. And the reason I'm doing this, even though we're going to do a big thing on the calendar together, we're going to get together, there's just too much to teach. This would be like 4 or 5 hours of teaching. So I'm doing it in little bits and stages to try to let you percolate on it, let you think about it, let you run it over in your mind. But here is this is out of a website called Talmudology. This is what the Talmud. This is what Judaism, modern day Talmudic Judaism. This is the concept that has come to us through Judaism, through the traditions. We're talking about Talmudic Judaism, and I got to preface this. We're getting this information from people that refuse Messiah, that reject Mashiach, that really do not obey Abba's instruction. Lots of other things they do, lots of other things they've added. Just listen to everything the master says about the Judaism of his day. It's no different today. In fact, it's gotten much, much worse today. It's full of mysticism and all sorts of other things. So, you got to take that into consideration here. Just because it's a tradition, just because this is something that's been said, just because it's taught in a seminary, just because it's taught in a yeshiva, just because this is what Rashi said or one of the sages, just because this is what they said, does not make it the truth if it is in opposition to what Moses said, if it's in opposition to what the prophets have said. Let the word of God be true and every man a what? A liar. I don't care how many degrees you got. I don't care what you can point out and say, well, history says this, history says that. I'm gonna go with Abba's Torah all the time. And I'm not saying I'm going to ignore history. I'm going to try to understand history in context to what Abba has said. History is absolutely important, but not in contradiction to Abba's word. So anyway, here's just a little piece. This is what the sages say about figuring out the new moon. The sages of the Talmud and those who interpreted them, like Rashi, took this as an axiomatic that once the moon is 6 hours old, which is to say, once 6 hours have passed from the time of conjunction. Conjunction meaning the idea is that the Earth, I'm going to use purple or pink here. Here's obviously the Earth. It is in line with the moon and the sun. We just had that eclipse a while ago. When this happens during the day, you get the eclipse. What is it, April 8th or something like that? We had the eclipse. That's a conjunction. Well, this happens once a month, except it says the Talmud says the rabbis say that 6 hours from this alignment of the sun, the earth, the moon. So they're all on the same side, right? The sun is being blocked out by the earth. The moon is it's in the front of the earth, and it's in the front of the sun. All three are together, and this is what you wind up with: zero illumination. You wind up with a dark moon. And they say 6 hours later, at least is what the Talmud says. This is actually not even accurate astronomically, but that's what they say. That 6 hours later, as the alignment breaks, as the moon is moving, that what you wind up with is this little crescent moon. And that crescent moon is called a new moon. And going back on all the verses we read, Talmudic Judaism then says that's the first day of a new month. Get a Jewish calendar, get a Hebrew calendar that has the moon phases on it, and you look on it, and even a Jewish calendar is not even accurate to the moon anymore. It's off by normally a day or two, if not 3 days. But it's supposed to be that when you see that little crescent, that's the first day of a new month. That's how you know when day one is. And you got to know the Abib, you got to know the day one in order to get day one of the 7th month accurate, and all the other days as well. This is what's come to us. This is what's come down over the last 2,000 years or so to us. Now I know there's going to be people say, "Oh, this is the way it's always been." You're going to find out in a second. No, it's not. It hasn't been this way. It's been very, very different from this. But just for argument's sake, That's the way it's presented to us now. Again, you can check some of this stuff out. And if you want to check out what the Talmud says, Talmudology, they go through different articles all the time on all this stuff. It's pretty interesting stuff. If you want to understand it. But the idea is that when you see this, that's when you know it's the beginning of a new month. And there's Jewish traditions that go along with this in the Talmud. The idea that you're supposed to have two witnesses come and they're supposed to see that. And if they see that, they got to go back to the high priest, and the two witnesses have to give a witness, and they get grilled, and they got to say, well, how lit was it? What was the amount of illumination? And then a priest decides whether what you saw was accurate or not, whether it actually was illuminated enough, or do we have to wait for the next day? Guys, that's not an appointed time. That's up to men then. That's us making the decision. That's Jewish tradition. And listen to what the Messiah said about Jewish tradition over and over and over and over again throughout the gospel stories. Blind leading the blind. And I'm not trying to beat anybody up, but I'm just saying. All right, so that's that. Here is the Encyclopedia Britannica, because what's happened is all cultures have the concept of the new moon as the beginning of a calendar month. All of them throughout all the history. Here's an article from the Encyclopedia Britannica. It says this is the Egyptian calendar, one of the oldest calendars there is. The Egyptian calendar, the dating system established several thousand years before the Common Era. The first calendar, known to use the year of 365 days, approximately equal to the solar year. In addition to this civil calendar, the ancient Egyptians simultaneously maintained a second calendar based upon the phases of the moon, the Egyptian lunar calendar. The older of the two systems consisted of 12 months whose duration differed according to the length of a full lunar cycle, so about between 29 and 30 days. I highlighted it in blue so you realize way back in Egypt, this is how the Egyptians, who were pagans, calculated the first day of their months. Each lunar month began with the new moon, reckoned from the first morning after the waning crescent, that crescent moon, had become invisible, and was named after a major festival celebrated within it. Since the lunar calendar was 10 or 11 days shorter than the solar year, a 13th month called Thoth was intercalculated every several years to keep the lunar calendar in rough correspondence with the agricultural seasons and their feasts. New Year's Day was signaled by the annual heliacal rising of the star Sothis, Sirius, when it could be observed on the eastern horizon just before dawn in midsummer. The timing of the observation would determine whether or not the intercalary month would be employed. So if you're just using the moon, what winds up happening is the moon is 10 days short from a solar year. And so every so many years, you got to add those 10 days back. You add a month back every 3 years. That'd be 30 days. We'll get into more of that later. I don't want to get anybody confused. What I want you to realize is the looking and the starting of a month being the crescent moon is in Egypt. Egyptians were doing this. The nations were doing it. It wasn't just the Egyptians. Guys, it wasn't just the Egyptians. Here is a part of another article out of Britannica. No extant evidence is known that describes the workings of the oldest Egyptian calendar, that of the pre-dynastic period. We do know that it must have been lunar. Among other things, the hieroglyphic symbol for month, the hieroglyphics that tell us what a month is, shows a crescent moon, the first visible crescent of the new moon over a star. So this would be the star or the sun or a star, and this would be the crescent. This is the symbol all over hieroglyphs in Egypt, dating all the way back whenever, back even before the Jews got there. This was how a month, the beginning of a month, was calculated. The crescent moon and the star. Okay, that's interesting. So this is what the nations were doing before Abba gives the instruction to Moses, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, well, it's a bigger story than that. Here's just so you realize this is not just Egypt. This is every culture did this. Every culture. The Egyptian calendar is based on the crescent moon to tell you when the beginning of the month is. The Assyrian calendar was based on the crescent moon to tell you when the beginning of the month was. The Babylonian calendar was based on the Egyptian calendar, the crescent moon, to tell you when the calendar began. The Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and actually the Romans just adopted what the Greeks adopted, which adopted what the Persians adopted, which adopted what the Babylonians adopted, which adopted what the Egyptians adopted. So they all come together. And what I did is I just showed you a whole bunch of coins, right? Coins across all the different ages. They've survived all of these thousands of years. And what you'll notice on coins from every culture all over the known world of that day was their celebration of the calendar, their months, how things were organized, what it told them when to sell, when to buy, when to rest, when to do all these things. And you can see these are the Celts. These are the Celtics. So this is nowhere near the Middle East. And what do they have on their coinage? The crescent moon and the star. It's every culture. Here's Babylon. And what do they have up there? The crescent moon and the star. Same as Egypt. Here's the Persians. And it's kind of hard to see here in the Persians. It's kind of messed up, but you got a crescent moon here. It's real small to see. And then you got the star on this side. The crescent moon and the star. And every one of these are the Phoenicians. Same idea. Here's the crescent moon and the star on that coin. Guys, Phoenicians, we're talking about the Canaanites. We're talking about the people of Jericho. We're talking about the people of Ai. We're talking about the Assyria, all of those people. What was their signal, their sign that a new month began? The crescent moon. The crescent moon, that was their signal. The Byzantines, Rome, right? Because Rome is Rome, and then Rome splits up into East and West. The Byzantine Empire, look at these coins. What is the symbol of the Byzantine Empire? Now, yes, a symbol of the Byzantine Empire is no doubt the eagle, right? The eagle is definitely a sign of one of the symbols of the Roman Empire. Well, do you know what another symbol of the Roman Empire is and how they kept time? The crescent moon. And here it is on their coinage. It's on their coinage. Here's Rome again. And what's on their coinage? The crescent moon. Here's Rome again. And what's on their coinage? The crescent moon. Here's the Greeks, predating Rome. And how did they tell a month? Same way. The crescent moon. And this symbol right here is the symbol of Constantinople, because eventually the Roman Empire gets split into East and West, religious Rome, Roman Christianity on one side, and then you've got pagan Rome on the other. The symbol of pagan Rome was the crescent moon and star, Constantinople. And then the Turks come in, the Turks, the Muslims take over Constantinople, take I forgot the name of the big temple there, Hagia Sophia. Take it over, and they make it a huge dome, a huge mosque, and they wanted to be like Rome. So what does Islam do? It adopts the crescent moon and the star. This dates back all the way to the beginning, and probably right up to Tower of Babel. So all the nations use the symbol of the crescent moon as a new moon. Here is Genesis 1:14 again, guys. And let them be, that is the sun, the moon, and the stars, for appointed times, for days and years, a calendar. Now, here's what Daniel tells us. And I'm only going to use Daniel. I think we mentioned this before. I don't want to get into this too much. So if the sun, the moon, and the stars is what Abba has given to us, we ought to know, what he means by new moon. But we need all three of them to have an accurate account to triangulate where we are, what day it is, what sign it is, what is the heavens speaking to us about. We got to know the first month of the first day of the first month to know the first day of the seventh month. So if you're the enemy, what are you going to do? Well, from the time of Egypt all the way to the time of Rome, the enemy's been messing with the calendar to be. I mean, don't you think the Jews were messed up when they were in Egypt? Of course they were. Why do you think God has to give instruction to Moses to do it this way? Follow this instruction. These are your days. Be separate. Be holy. Do not be like the nations. Don't follow what the nations are doing. And then Daniel tells us what the fourth beast, which is Rome, is going to do. I know we touched on this last week, but it's worth listening to again. Daniel chapter 7, verse 21 explains what Rome is going to do. It tells us what Babylon was going to do, what it's going to be known for. It tells us what Greece and Medo-Persia is known for. But it also tells us what Rome and religious Rome are going to do to Yah's people. It says, I was looking, and this horn, Rome, was fighting against the set-apart ones, the Jews, the citizens of the house of Israel, and was prevailing against them. Rome was prevailing against them. When? Well, for the last 2,000 years, actually, until the Ancient of Days came. Well, the Ancient of Days comes when Mashiach comes. The Mashiach represents all the authority of Father when he comes. And when the Ancient of Days comes, all right ruling was given to the set-apart ones of the Most High. And the time came for the set-apart ones who took possession of the kingdom. Well, that hasn't happened yet. So what is Abba going to do as the coming of Messiah draws near? Moses told us he's going to circumcise our hearts, that we would obey again, that we were lost amongst the nations. This is Deuteronomy 28, 29, 30. We would be lost among the nations. We would forget everything. We'd worship just like the pagans do. But there will come a day when we will want to circumcise our hearts, where we will want to know the difference between wheat and tares. And we would want to know the difference between leaven and unleavened. And we would make that pursuit and slowly start to come out of darkness. And the more we come out of darkness and the more we learn and the more we understand, the closer we are coming to the Ancient of Days returning. That's what Daniel's telling us. But it doesn't end there. He goes on to say, and Rome, this is what Rome's going to do. This is what Rome already has done. So history does matter. I'm not saying ignore history. History does matter. And Rome, speaks words against the Most High. Well, I think I said this last week. You know what Rome did a lot of things. Obviously destroyed the temple, but Rome made it illegal to even mention the name of Yahuwah. It was illegal. You died for it. Many people died for doing that. Rome spoke words against the Most High, put up a whole arch and pillar in Rome about how they conquered the God of Israel. It's still there today. If you go to Rome, the arch is still there. The victory trophy for conquering the house of Israel, for conquering the God of Israel, is still standing in Rome today. Speaks words against the Most High and wears out, overcomes the set-apart ones. Wait a second, you're telling me this is telling us Rome is going to overcome us? Yes, it has for like 2,000 years. It's overcome us. And what does Rome do? And Rome, intends to change, to leaven the sun, the moon, the stars, the appointed times. Because if he's going to leaven the appointed times, the only way you can do it is with the sun, the moon, and the stars. And the law, the Torah. Well, what has Rome done? What has Christian Rome done? Exactly that. A brand new calendar, brand new holidays, brand new winter stuff, brand new Resurrection Day, brand new birthday, brand new Valentine's Day, brand new New Year's. All of it's changed. No Torah, it's a burden. All of that has come true. Literally what this says, we and our ancestors have lived through, and we're watching it right now. And they, Jerusalem, are given into its hand for a time, times, and half a time. For 3.5 Moedim, we're talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. That's how long it took. 3.5 cycles of Moedim for Jerusalem to fall, from 67 AD to 70 AD. Okay. That's what the enemy would do. That's what the deception will be. Because if he can put a little leaven in it, over time, it's just going to leaven everything out. For the Jews, for the Talmudic Jews, for the Rabbinic Jews, for the Netzarim, for anybody who's trying to keep this thing, and certainly for anybody who's gets sucked up into the religion of Rome, we're all going to be lost. We're all going to be in the dark. Except while we're lost and in the dark, some of us are wheat, some of us are tares. And harvest time, maturity, is what sets us apart. This is what Revelation chapter 6 is talking about, the white horse. Here it is, the white horse. Rome, or Mystery Babylon, the religion, the coming religion, Revelation 6:2. And I looked and I saw a white horse, and he who sat on it was holding a bow. And a crown was given to him, and he went overcoming and to overcome. To overcome who? Exactly who? What Daniel said. To overcome Abba's name, to overcome Abba's temple, to overcome Abba's city, Jerusalem, to overcome the believers, to go after those who have the testimony of Yeshua and keep the commandments, to change the appointed times and the Torah. That's what he did. It is right in front of us. I know people can deny it, but I can't deny it. It's right in front of us. Okay, so that's the deception. We've been talking about deception for a while. That's the plan of the enemy. Sow a little leaven. Remove this. Add to that. Take away from that, and it compounds over time. So did this idea that starts in Egypt end at some point? No, it's still going on. It's still going on. Remember all the other things we saw, if this is a timeline all the way back here from Egypt? Well, this is Rome. That's pagan Rome, which is Constantinople, which becomes Turkey, right? It's Turkey today. It's Istanbul. This is the Turks take it over, the Muslims take it over. And what do? They adopt the same symbol and the same way of telling time. The same way it's been done for, forever, the same way the nations have always been doing it. And it wasn't just the one eastern part of the Roman Empire, it was the Western religious part of the Roman Empire. She did it too. Yes, the symbol's the cross. Yes, the symbol's the X with the key and the Holy See and all the rest of that and the dragon, and those are all other symbols we'll get into. But do you know what a main symbol is of the Roman religion that took over the world? The crescent moon with the stars. The crescent moon. And the sun, the star. And of course, Semiramis, Nimrod town. It's all the same stuff. It's been going on for a long time. This is consistent throughout history. This, throughout history, even till today, is called a new moon. Question is, and I know it's controversial. I know some people just aren't going to get it. They're going to say, no, that's what the history books say. That's what the professor says. That's what, so-and-so says, for the last 500 years, 1,000 years. That's what the Jews have said. Yeah, I get it. But Daniel told us he would do this to the Jews too. They too, the leaven would mess them up too. And they had their own issues with leaven when Messiah came. Do you think it got better? You think they got better after rejecting Messiah? You think they got closer to the truth after rejecting Messiah? They get closer to the truth, or do they get further away from the truth? And we have a world full of tares. Tares or leaven, whichever way you want to look at it. All right, so with that in mind now, where in all of the Torah, in all of the writings, and I'm talking about whether you're talking apocryphal writings, whether you're talking what we call the canonical writings, the Torah, the prophets, where in all of that writing does it ever say that the new month starts at the crescent moon? Because it's kind of important. If it does, that's kind of important. Does it say anywhere anything different? And the answer is yes, it does. Here is Psalm chapter 81, verses 2 and 3. Now, most versions interpret this or translate this way. Shout for joy to Elohim, our strength. Raise a shout to Elohim of Jacob. Lift up a song and beat the tambourine, the pleasant lyre, and with the harp. Blow a shofar in the new moon. Okay, that's perfect. That's exactly all the verses we read before. Be it Isaiah, be it Ezekiel, be it Leviticus. There's supposed to be a new moon celebration to let you know when the first day starts. So is it a little crescent slither that you got to have a couple of people witness and someone decide for sure if it is or if it isn't, or you got to go another day? Or is it something so obvious to everybody that there is, that's not dependent upon the nature of barley and whether it's ripe or not? And I'm not saying that doesn't have some validity to it, but that's not the Torah either. The Torah doesn't say go out to the field and check the barley to see if the barley's ripe. It doesn't say to do that. It says to guard the Abib. It tells us the feast days tell us the sun, the moon, and the stars. The Abib is up there. We don't have time to get into it, but the Abib is up there. We'll talk. Well, maybe next week we'll talk about that. Here's the amplified version and a gazillion other versions. And guys, how many versions we've got? How many times has this thing been translated? Some of them translated, including some Hebrew Tanakh versions. Listen to what it says. Blow the trumpet at the new moon. Here it is, guys. At the full moon. A full moon is not a crescent moon. On our feast day, for this is a statute for Israel forever, an ordinance of the God of Jacob. Here's the ASV version. Blow a trumpet at the new moon, at the full moon, on our feast day, for it is a statute for Israel. Here's a Jewish version, CJB. Sound the shofar at Rosh Chodesh. That means the head of the month. At a full moon. And we went over the word Kodesh. It comes from the word Kadash, which means new, but it also means renewed, to fill up, to be complete. And so, Rosh Chodesh, blow the shofar at Rosh Chodesh at the full moon. Guys, this is a Jewish version for the pilgrim feast, because this is the law for Israel. Here's another Jewish Tanakh version, 1917. Blow the horn at the new moon, at the full moon, for our feast day. Here's the Catholic version. Here's the Roman version, which absolutely has affected lots of other versions. But look what the Roman scribes did. Blow the trumpet on the new moon on the noted day. Wait a second. What did they just do? They just took away and added, I guess, at the same time. The day of our solemnity. Here's the Catholic public domain version. Sound the trumpet at the new moon on the noteworthy day of your solemnity. It's been removed. And versions reflected that because they would translate other versions from those versions. They translate other versions from the Latin Vulgate. And so this era, once a little leaven got in, leavened everything, including Judaism. And I know it's a tough thing to wrap your mind around. But listen, either Daniel is right or Daniel's wrong. And if Daniel's wrong, then Abba's word is wrong, and you and I are all in a heap of trouble. Might as well just throw the whole thing away, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die. Don't do that. It's not what I'm telling you to do. I'm just saying that's sort of the thing. Psalms 81. Is that the only witness we have? Well, by now, you guys should know, hopefully you guys have taken the time to read the book of Enoch. What have we been told forever not to do? Don't read the book of Enoch. Just don't do it. And I know there's all sorts of, people got all sorts of different ideas about the calendar and the moon and the sun, because you got some groups saying, well, it's the sun. You got other groups saying, well, it's the moon. No, it's the sun, the moon, and the stars. You need all three to work together, or you may get close, but you're not going to hit it on the nail head. And, close just is not the appointed time. Here is Enoch, chapter 78. And I know people read Enoch and they're all like, oh man, this guy's so hard to understand. It's kind of out there. And let's see if we can make some sense of this. He's talking about the moon and its phases. Uriel is speaking to him. And in verse 8 he says, and in its waning. So it's going to start to get dark. Well, what does it have to be before it gets dark? Full. So now he's telling us the process of it getting dark. And in its waning to get dark on the first day. He's not referring to the first day of the month. You'll see that in a second. The first day of it getting darker. It decreases to 14 parts of its light. He's talking about the reflective light of the moon is diminishing as the days go on. And the second, 13 parts. And the third, 12 parts. And the fourth, 11 parts. The fifth, 10 parts. The sixth, 9 parts. And on the seventh, 8 parts. And on the eighth, 7 parts. And on the ninth, 6 parts. And on the 10th, 5 parts. And on the 11th, 4 parts. And on the 12th, 3. And on the 13th, 2. And on the 14th day of the month, from the full moon to half of a 7th part. And all the light that remains from the total disappears on the 15th day from the full moon. So if this is 15 days in, he's telling us how the moon is waning. It started off full. He's telling us the process of waning and how long it takes. It takes 15 days. And then what happens? So he's told us this one part of the process. Now let's look at this. And in certain months, the moon has 29 days, and once 28. And Uriel showed me another law. These are the laws Abba established in the sun, the moon, and the stars. When light is transferred to the moon, for light to be transferred to the moon, the sun has to be here, the moon has to be on the opposite side of the earth. If the sun is here, my microphone is the moon, and if the microphone is the earth and my hand is the moon, and this hand is the sun, you get a dark moon. But if the moon is on the opposite side, now you get a full moon. That's what he's saying. When light is transferred to the moon, when it is opposite the sun, not lined up with the sun, opposite of the sun, on which side it transferred from the sun, all the time that the moon is increasing in its light, its transfer as it becomes opposite the sun until in 14 days, that is after the 15 days already mentioned, its light is full in the sky. Wait a minute, what is the moon? It is full in the sky. And when it is all ablaze, full moon, its light is full in the sky. And on the first day that the light is full in the sky, here it is called the new moon. That's Abba's definition, not the nation's definition. That's the prophet's definition, not the nation's definition. This is Enoch's definition, Moses' definition, not the Talmud's definition. For on that day, daylight rises on it, and its light becomes, here, I'm going to get rid of some of these lines here. I'm right here in the green. And its light becomes full exactly on the day that the sun goes down in the west. It rises from the east for the night. So he's telling us they have to be on opposite sides of the horizon. That's the first day of a new month, when they're on opposite sides of the horizon, not when they're lined up together in conjunction, when they're on opposite sides from one another. And the moon shines for the whole night, so the moon's got to be full throughout that night. When it hits its top radiance, that next morning is the first day of the month. A new moon, a Sabbath, a day to worship. And the moon shines for the whole night until the sun rises opposite it, and the moon is seen opposite the sun. And on the side on which the light of the moon appears, there again it wanes until all its light is. So then the process starts all over again. Now it starts to wane, starts to go back down, and the process will start back up again. And the whole thing takes 29 days, 30 days, until all its light disappears, and the days of the moon end, and its disk remains empty without light. So Enoch is telling us, just like Psalms 81 is telling us, that a new moon is not a crescent moon the way the nations have defined it. Instead, it is a full moon. Guys, that's a huge, huge difference. Let me see if I can show you one here real quick. I know I'm running out of time, but let me see if I can make sense of this. So the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. Let me see, I'll make this yellow. This is the sun. It's a big yellow ball, right? The sun is going down, and the moon is rising. That's this. That's a new moon day, when they are on opposite sides. And the moon will rule the night. It's got to be when it's a full moon. It will rule the night. And what will happen is the sun, because this is the horizon. I know it looks flat, but it's not. It's circular. But in the morning, as the sun, and it's not when the sun comes up. It's not morning time. It's not daylight time. It's dawn. It's when you just got that orange haze, and you see the full moon, so you see the full moon when the sun is going down, when it's below the horizon. Let me erase some of this. So the moon, the sun actually has to be just below the horizon. Its light is just peeking up. The moon is just coming up, and it is totally illuminated. That next morning, as the sun comes up and the moon is starting to go down, that's the first day of a new month. That's what it is. Now, understand the difference here, because the difference then that we're being told, let me get rid of some of this just to make, hopefully you guys understanding my scribble. We're being told this is the first day. And this only happens when the sun is here and the moon is here. And it wouldn't even be that way. It would be a crescent. The moon is there and the earth is here. What's the difference between this and this? About 14 or 15 days. Wait a minute. So you're telling me we could be off by 2 weeks? Yes. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. And then you destroy all the appointed times, all the Torah, all of the name, all of it changes. This is serious stuff. This is serious stuff. Hopefully you guys got that. I know I'm running out of time. We'll go over this again, but it's all and here's the other thing. So when the sun, that's the wrong color. So when the sun is setting, or when the sun is about to rise, and the moon is setting, or the moon is about to rise, there is a star that leads it. There's a star that leads the sun, and there's a star that leads the moon. These stars are a sign. They tell us something on a particular day when you understand the name of the star. When Messiah says there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the star, he's just quoting Genesis. Abba's going to tell us the story in the stars. Not signs like total eclipse and the flood's going to come or something like. No. He's talking about signs and the names of the stars that Abba named. And when we get more into Enoch, we're going to find out there's always a leader star. There's always a star leading the moon. There's always a star leading the sun. And the only time you see this is not at sunrise. It's at dusk. It's at dawn, just before the sun comes up. That's when you read the stars. When did Messiah rise? Just before the dawn. Just before the dawn. Another message, another day. Okay, so what should it be? Or at least this is what I'm proposing to you. Here it is, guys. Jeremiah 31, the new covenant. So why did Abba, so what's the spiritual meaning here? Why did Abba even give us a new moon? Month after month, year after year. Why give that to Israel? Because it was, as Saul says in Colossians, a shadow of Messiah. A renewed moon, a full moon, every month to be celebrated was the celebration of the coming of the Messiah, who would fill up with meaning the Torah. Not a little crescent meaning of the Torah, the full meaning of the Torah. That's what every new moon was about. It was looking forward to the renewed covenant. Jeremiah 31, see, the days are coming, declares Yah, when I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Messiah says, do not think I came to destroy the Torah of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to make full, make complete, fill up, just like a full moon, not a crescent. Verse 35, Jeremiah 31, thus says Yah, who gives the sun for light by day. These are the laws that we read about in Enoch. And the laws of the moon and the stars by night, which we read in Enoch, who stirs up the sea and its waves roar. Yah of hosts is his name. If these laws vanish from before me, declares Yah, if the sun on one side, the moon on the other, if the full moon, if the leader stars, if the story, if that vanishes from before Yah, then the seed of Israel shall also cease from being a nation before me. Well, guess what, guys? It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop, and it's not going to stop till there's a new heaven and a new earth. This is what Messiah was talking about. This is what Abba's been talking about. This is a very, very different, I know, concept. It's going to mess us up on all sorts of other things. But it's not about being right. I don't want to be right. I want to be accurate. I want to be accurate. I want to gain interest. And so hopefully this makes sense to you guys. I hope it does. We'll go over it again and again. I'm just trying to put a little bit out there each time to hopefully help you guys understand piece by piece by piece by piece. I know you probably got tons of questions. We'll definitely have a time to sit down and go over all that stuff, but at least we're starting to get piece by piece by piece based on all the stuff we've heard. Guys, this looks like wheat. It looks like wheat, but it's not. It's close. It's close. It's close, but it's not. And a little leaven has leavened the whole lump. Across the board. Everybody. Including us. And what are we doing? We are fulfilling Revelation 18. Come out of her, my people. Touch not the unclean thing, so that you are not judged the way she is going to be judged. Come out of her. That's what's happening. Guys, that is Abba's word for you guys for tonight. I hope you enjoyed that. I know it's a lot of information. I know you guys are probably not going to sleep tonight after listening to that. It's going to bug you out because you're going to start thinking this thing through. But that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Think it through. It's got to make sense. I know there's going to be a whole lot of other voices out there. They're going to say something different, and that's okay. You know what? You got to hear Abba's voice. I'm not the teacher. I'm just the guy saying some stuff. Either the Holy Spirit's a teacher through Mashiach, and that's it. That's it. So hold on to that. Say, Abba, give me some understanding, give me some wisdom. Make that prayer every day. Abba, give me eyes to see, ears to hear, hearts that are willing to obey. In the meantime, guys, have an awesome night out there. Again, don't forget to subscribe. We appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the message. Download the notes. Be part of the conversation. You can join us on Manna Eaters. You can join us. Download the app. We'd appreciate that. Guys, in the meantime, have an awesome night. We'll see you on Friday night with Brother Max. And, of course, this weekend, we're going to talk about, what are we going to get into? Oh, we're going to get into a good one, a scary one. We're going to get into a good one. We're going to talk about the mustard seed. The mustard seed. Guys, it's an eye-opener. Anyway, join us then. Shalom.